So here on our panel today, we have Jade Hudson, who is a production engineering manager at Boeing, Senior One. And we have Amanda Levenson, who is a facility process engineer over at Intel. And we also have Katie Clasen, who's engineer, works at Sila Nanotechnologies. So could you tell me a little bit about your day-to-day job? What's it like?
Meetings and meetings and meetings. No, so day to day, if I break out like what I do, because I'm a senior manager, I have 5 different groups. So there will be like, people stuff, there will be business administrative, there will be technology deep dive, and there will be like, there's a people doing mentoring, that's kind of the people side, and also networking in terms of connecting the dots between my organization and outside organization. So that's kind of in general, what I do. Not day to day, but it just, every time it depends on what situation comes up.
Yeah, so as a process engineer, right now I'm currently supporting the production line. So the first thing I do when I come in the morning is I do some process monitoring. I do kind of a review of the process performance on the production line for the last day or so, just to get up to speed. And then I immediately roll into a operations alignment meeting. And this is pretty common, I think, across industries as a process engineer. That gives you the opportunity to go out to the manufacturing floor, talk with the operators, trying to understand if they're having any issues or any special projects that are kind of upcoming for that day or later in the week that you need to kind of provide support for. And then as Jade mentioned, a lot of the rest of the day, a lot of meetings, really cross-collaborative effort between battery engineering, production manufacturing, and process engineering to kind of deliver on optimization projects on the production line.
So I would agree with everything that was mentioned. I guess to provide some context, as a process engineer at Intel, I'm at the high volume manufacturing site, so we produce about 60% of Intel's revenue around the world. In this site, I own a piece of equipment that help make this manufacturing process run. So I'm specifically in bulk chemical delivery. So I own all the equipment pieces in 30 different types of chemistries that supply all the tools that make the processors. So along with daily trend reviews and being out on the floor and understanding what's happening mechanically and electrically with the systems, we also work on improvement projects. We work with construction, design, to make our site better and more efficient as well. So.
Thank you. And speaking more on the day-to-day, how did you get to this day-to-day? Can you tell us a little bit about your career trajectory since graduation?
Me specifically, or is that
all of you? I'd love to hear from all of you.
Yeah, so I'm an alumni here. Come from an oil and gas family, so I definitely had that influence going in of like, you should be a chemical engineer, you should work in oil and gas. But along with that family influence, I also wanted to start in oil and gas, I think, for 2 reasons. One of which is that the size allows for a lot of development. So they're able to provide a lot of development opportunities from kind of like technical trainings and or like giving you high-level projects to work on that really gives you a good technical foundation and understanding. I think the second thing about starting in oil and gas was that because of the high-risk nature of the business, they kind of demand excellence on a day-to-day basis, and I really wanted to start with that foundation. So I worked as a process engineer, something very similar to what Amanda said, supporting specific asset or part of the production line at a refinery. So I did that for about 4 years, and then started thinking, okay, so this job feels like a high-impact job, meaning that I have a lot of responsibility, I have a lot of autonomy and authority in my day-to-day work, but I want it to feel highly impactful as well. Like I wanted something that better aligned with my values. So I started looking at specifically electric vehicles and electrification. Okay, how do I mirror this like process engineering background with like electrification and batteries? And actually I just found Sila Nanotechnologies, which is a startup looking to scale their manufacturing line to build like next generation lithium-ion batteries. So that's kind of how it happened.
I ended up at Intel, not actually looking to go into industry at all in the first place. I spent most of my time here at UW doing biotechnology research. Through various professional development, leadership opportunities with things like Wiki or Society of Women Engineers, came across an internship at Intel. I thought, well, hey, I should at least try industry. And I loved the fast-paced environment and the ability to make an immediate impact. So you make a decision and you pretty much see the results pretty quickly as far as, in contrast to research, so maybe a little more theoretical or farther ahead from actually producing a product to the market or to customers. So kind of like what Cynthia had said earlier, I wanted to make a difference with my engineering degree also, and I feel that technology, working at Intel, that enables that technology, reaches everyone around the world. As far as my current role, I just like that my day-to-day is different. I get to wear a lot of different hats and do a bunch of different things just because I have a lot of interests. And being at a big company gives me a lot of opportunities to work with people of different backgrounds, and maybe look at different job functions and explore several opportunities. So.
I have been with Boeing for 28 years. I'm a lot older than two of them. I got a degree in chemical engineering, and frankly, when I just graduated, I just want a job. Okay, so to me, I was lucky to get a job at the time, and then ever since, I probably had like 20 different jobs within Boeing, and there's a lot of what Cynthia was saying. There's a lot of pull, focus on what you're doing, and an opportunity just came around. And in the first half of my career, I didn't want to be a manager. So to me, it's like, what do I want to be a manager? Just happy as an engineer, right? But again, when opportunity came, and to me it's fundamentally, every job is very similar in a way. But anyway, the first half of my career at Boeing, I was an engineer. Second half, I was a manager. So, and I managed a variety of different teams, different skills. I actually didn't do that much chemical engineering as my career. When I look at my career, 28 years, I would say chemical engineering probably a third of my life. So I'm an impression that if you have a chemical engineering degree, you can do whatever you want. If you look at how the skill set, what the discipline that you have, and I really think chemical engineering is one of the toughest, degree that you can get. Well, my husband is mechanical engineer, so we always compete. But I think chemical engineering is one of the hardest ones. And you can really do whatever you want. I mean, I have led technology that's completely outside the chemical engineering discipline, like assembly. I know nothing about assembly. Metals. My team now is all metals and composite. So that's just whatever opportunity takes you.
Just a quick question: Who here? Oh, sorry. Who here thinks that they know like exactly what a chemical engineer does? Like that classic question that we always get. Like, who has an answer to that?
I like to know too.
I heard the word responsibility come up a couple of times. What is it like to be an engineer and to have the responsibility that you have? And how would you define that?
It was a little nerve-wracking at first, especially after graduation, going into a role where, if you make the wrong decision, you can endanger someone's safety or, cost the company millions of dollars because you shut something down. But it's actually really empowering and a really cool opportunity to grow, both in your leadership, your technical skills. You learn a lot of accountability. So.
Yeah,
that was pretty general, but.
No, I agree with that too. Yeah, go ahead.
I would say it's really empowering, and also is really motivating to own your own asset or part of the production line. I know that the times in my career that have been the most exciting to me have really been the turnaround periods, or periods where we're doing maintenance on the units, where we shut them down, take them all apart, and as an engineer, I was working large scale, so crawl in everything, for a month straight. And I know that doesn't sound like that great, but afterwards you have a much better understanding of how the column works or how the reactor works. You can see the reactor internals and like imagine in your head like how the gas flow is actually moving through that reactor, right? And spending so many hours kind of like getting intimate with the equipment, you get a passion for it and like you really want to kind of help run it the best way possible. I think there's also an aspect of like helping operators, because when the asset or the machine isn't working right, it's like, it makes their day awful. And so you as an engineer, like trying to help make the operator's day better. And I've always found that to be really motivating.
Yeah, with that, people really look to you, either people in other groups that are on different sides of your process, either upstream or downstream, or like Katie said, your operators are looking at you for your advice and your expertise and your technical knowledge. So that's a really cool opportunity.
Yeah, and I'm in the midst of like the manufacturing operation. So my factory, we have about 800 employees, and I have the engineering team. I would say the engineering team influences a lot and has a lot of impact with that manufacturing operation. We help with a lot of problem solving, we help with designing tools, and we help in terms of even negotiate back to the designer, because different, the design owns, resides in program, the airplane program. But my team has a lot to do with day-to-day production, throughput, quality, safety, delivery of this business unit's throughput. So I like to kind of joke around saying engineering makes a dream come true in the factory, because everything that it couldn't do, it basically is like code up engineering. So yeah, we have a big impact there.
Does our audience have any questions so far? Yes, go ask.
When you said that operators kind of like look to you to make their lives easier, could you, I guess, talk about what I guess that means a little more?
I can start to answer that, and if you have anything else to feedback. So I guess in any sort of manufacturing or process environment, you have your technicians or operators who are actually doing the physical work on your system. So they're actuating the buttons or monitoring the regulators, doing the maintenance work. So if a pump or a valve fails or some sort of physical mechanical component, they're changing that out. But engineers are there to provide the guidance on the more high-level technical aspects of that. So how are you going to change that pump out? What parts of the system do you need to isolate to enable a safe state? If it's a complex system, what can you do to enable maintenance that might not otherwise be possible? You provide the direction, the safety, the procedures. There's kind of a natural relationship in your group to guide the direction for the team. So.
My team also designed a lot of ergo tools for the workers. Lots of safety device. My team has a huge influence on that.
Did that answer your question?
Anyone else? So I know in process and manufacturing, there's a really diverse set of teams that actually go into making the products that we have possible or whatever it is that's being innovated. What's it like either managing those teams or working with those different teams who have a variety of skill sets?
What is it like?
Yeah, what is it like and how do you manage?
Yeah, so my team, I have like mechanical, chemical, electrical, so it's equipment. To me, is you got to be very clear on their mission statement, their statement of work, and how does that connect to my business units, we call KPI, the key performance indicators. So to me is make sure that what they do, they can connect the dots. And also the team collaboration is very important. A lot of time I see when people don't collaborate well, is actually they don't have very clear the role is not clear, role clarity, that's what we said. You know, because when you have different skill sets, you have to be very clear whose function is to do what. So there's a lot of soft skill that play in terms of how to make this whole team work. That's.
I think some of my favorite projects and roles within Shell and now at Sila are kind of working to integrate really complex cross-discipline teams towards kind of an aligned goal or mission, right? And I think the biggest thing that's helped me in that process is always having a learner's mentality. So not being defensive, like this is, my function, this is my, I'm the chemical engineering advocate here. Like it's important to know that you have that skill set to rely on, but be more of a question asker and a learner and just like love to like understand how you are involved in this project. Like tell me about what you're thinking about, what considerations go through your head when we're making this change or when we're trying to kind of integrate this new optimization project into the production line.
Yeah, it can be challenging because on a day-to-day you have different priorities or maybe slightly different language or way of operating, but ultimately you all work at the same company and want the best for your site and production line. So yeah, it is really cool to, like you said, learn about a different group, maybe gain another perspective on your own work or just about the company in general, and it could segue into your next role or something like that. I think, yeah, like I said, I was recently working on a project with different groups, and my group had been banging their heads against the wall on a certain project. They came up with one solution. They're like, "This is the best we can do." Brought it to another group, and with a fresh set of eyes, they were like, "Well, why don't you just do this?" And we were all, definitely provides diverse input and perspectives and ideas to do the best jobs we do.
So specifically, what specific soft skills do you think have been most applicable throughout your career?
Communication. To me, it's basically open and candid conversation. Always assume good intent. If you have a conflict, it's better to talk face to face. Don't send angry email. I think I said that a lot. Do not send angry email. But yeah, collaboration and appreciate diversity. I mean, know what diversity means to you. Diversity is really not just put up with other people. Okay, it's enrichment. So yeah. Say that would be top of my list.
Yeah, clear communication also when you're communicating your technical problem. What is the actual issue? What do you know? What are you able to contribute? What are you asking of people? And yeah, just being a pleasant person to work with. I mean, even if you're having a tough day, you don't want to make someone else's day tougher than it is. Be an enjoyable teammate, be willing to help out, and again, learn from other people as well.
I think project management, like approaching each problem like it's a large project and looking at it with like a project management skill set has been really helpful. Because I think sometimes as an engineer, you may not always, when the request comes in to try and solve something, that the requester may not have the full picture, the full view as to why something's happening. So you may be asked, for example, like, hey, can you help with troubleshooting, or hey, can you put in this new pump? And I think it's important to step back and say, okay, what's really the objective or the intent of this request? Is it the pump that's not working, or is there some other performance indicator that's, maybe there's an assumption that it's really the pump, when if you kind of take a step back thinking about like, okay, what's the intent of this request? Like, what do I actually want to solve here? Then you may peel back the layers and find the true cause of that problem, for example. So that's been helpful.
And always keep it. Tell somebody you're going to get something done, get it done. Even though it's not impacting the schedule, but that's your company.
So could you describe for us a little bit how, you're going through all of your different days, like throughout your careers, and how has being a woman in engineering, have there been any challenges associated with that? And if so, like how have you overcome them?
That's a tough one for me. I don't experience a lot of that where I work, but I have to say, you know, for me, and I'm pretty small too, it's when you are very respectful, and then but speak your mind, you know, I feel like that is something that I have to. It's a learned skill for me, you know. It's because to me it's naturally I'm a kind of a shy person, and even if you disagree, especially in my culture, I grew up in Taiwan, and I didn't come to this country until I was 15. Is we don't speak openly against another person in my culture, right? And but to me is I have to learn. I mean, it's you can have different opinion, but you have to be respectful. And so that is, to me, it's definitely a learned skill. And but once you've done that, and you know, people know that you speak the truth, that they will respect you. So
I would say personally that I feel like we have a long way to go still. And I think that one thing that I try and think about, you know, in my day-to-day job is like, how can I continue to be an advocate for other women and gender minorities in the workplace? So that's something that I continue to do, whether it be, you know, through my ERG, which is another 3-letter acronym for Employee Resource Group at work. So whether I can be in a leadership position there and develop my own skills while also serving other women and gender minorities in the workplace, or whether it just be, you know, offering support to a friend or colleague, or coaching for someone that wants to learn how to be more inclusive in the workplace. I think that's really important for all folks in STEM fields to kind of contribute to and keep on going.
Yeah, so I personally don't feel that I've experienced outright discrimination or any barriers for being a woman. I feel really fortunate to work at a company that extremely values diversity, inclusion, and male allyship. But I agree with, you know, continuing to support. We also call them ERGs. So diversity resource groups in your company. You know, speaking up if you do hear that someone has had some sort of encounter. So actually, last week, a guy who sits next to me, he said, "Hey, can I ask you a question? Would you feel uncomfortable if someone wrote an email and said, addressed you as honey, and then, you know, continued to be derogatory about your whatever opinion you had?" And I said, "Yeah." He's like, "I'm gonna go, you know, talk to HR about that." So it is, you know, I don't know what repercussion comes of that, but it is good to see that people are identifying these kind of situations and trying to do something about it. I would say as far as challenges, I probably have faced more challenges in the way of being a millennial, or potentially ageism. You know, people have these expectations of you, you know, being on your phone or working too fast, jumping into things, not being patient. So I guess for me, that's just been a lesson to be mindful of those stereotypes, and maybe a challenge to prove people wrong, and take a step back sometimes and slow down, because I would agree that sometimes we all fall into that. So.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions?
yes.
With regards to people skills,
Yeah.
Sort of like in the undergrad setting, how would you be able to like best sort of practice those people skills and soft skills?
Practice. I would say continue to seek understanding. You know, I mean, if you look amongst your class, it's diversity everywhere, right? People come from different background, and when you are in a project together, this is probably where you can practice, you know, from what you have. Because looking back, I mean, I was in a project with a person that I think he was like 20 years older than me, you know, at the time. But he was, and he didn't really, you know, I was very intense and he was not, you know. And we always had conflict at the time. This is again way back. But looking back now, that's where I should start learning practicing, I think you will find opportunities everywhere, day-to-day life. So that's kind of what I can say.
Yeah, I would encourage you to get involved in things outside of the classroom too, whether that's research or the RSOs on campus, because I think a lot of my project management or people interfacing opportunities came from leadership opportunities, event planning, things like that.
Yeah, so for me, I guess looking back, I realized I didn't feel like I gave myself enough exposure to other types of learning at UW. Now my brother's here and he's taking so many more classes in so many different departments that I just didn't think about. Like, I mean, I could have taken a creative writing class or a public speaking class, or maybe I could have joined like a Toastmasters group, which is kind of like practicing public speakings with people, public, I obviously didn't do this. Public speaking with, I think, random strangers, or even doing, I mentioned this earlier to someone, but like the solar, like the eco-car team, something like that, where you're working with like very cross-discipline, like multi-department folks. And I feel like that's so, so invigorating, and like you just learn so much, and that creative side of the brain that maybe we don't get as much exposure to has been really helpful for me in my professional setting, and I wish I would have leaned into that more in the academic setting.
And ask feedback too for your teammates. Just, you know, for your professors, for people around you, you can ask feedback too. Yeah.
Anyone else? Any questions? Katherine, what makes you want to leave Shell and then join a startup?
Yeah, great question. So Shell was a multinational diversified energy company, and so that means that they had a new energies organization, but then also had like this traditional oil and gas. And internally, like I loved my career at Shell, I loved my job at Shell. And internally, I'd always been kind of saying, like, I really want to get into this new energies business. Like, how do I do this, right? And I think what you can see specifically for the oil and gas majors, there is a lot of shifting with their traditional like refining assets. So Shell had announced that they were going to sell the refinery that I was working at, and that essentially kind of closed the door for me to internally transfer into this new energies department that I had been wanting to go into this whole time, right? And of course, like I still would have had my job. Actually, the career opportunities probably would have been better, at least for the short term, because they really wanted people to stay. But for me, it's like, gosh, you know, like, first of all, from a value standpoint, like I was at Shell because they had this, you know, they were investing in renewables, and I really believed in that, and I wanted to be there. So why don't I just do that? Why don't I just go and do that now, sort of thing? So then I started thinking, like, okay, I started looking around, and I became super interested in electrification and EVs. And I also saw that in oil and gas, like in the refinery, a lot of the struggles were because we didn't have a lot of money. Like the margins are really low in oil and gas, or specifically in manufacturing in oil and gas. So it's like, how do I get into an industry that's going to grow a ton in the next 10, 20, 30 years? Because I have 35 more years of my career left. And batteries is going to do that. So for me, I'm like, gosh, like that would be really interesting. So started thinking more of like electrification and EVs and battery space. Like, how do I pair my manufacturing process engineering experience with that? And ended up finding a company that's working on exactly that, like scaling manufacturing for a new anode material for lithium-ion batteries. Yeah.
And does your role change in the traditional like companies like Shell or the startups?
What was that?
Is your role change? Is there a role change?
No, so I'm still I was in the process engineering team before, and I'm in the process engineering team now. So in that way, it's very similar. But in terms of like the work environment I'm working in, it could not be more different. They went from like the 5th largest company in the world by revenue to a company that has is valued at $1 billion, but we haven't produced, like, you know, there's 140 of us right now. So while the title is very similar, my day-to-day job is extremely different, and the challenges that we're facing is very, very different, which is exciting. So, yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about self-doubt and handling that? How do you overcome self-doubt in the workplace?
Question. No, just kidding. Well, I think we all have a little bit of that, right? And sometimes I look at it as, especially my team too, and myself, don't downplay the success you have, you know, because again, I'm gonna draw back to my culture, is I was taught in a way that if people praise you, don't even say thank you back, right? I mean, you would disagree with them, that's how you were brought up. But so to me is celebrate little success you have in life, a job. And I don't know, I guess to me it's, you're gonna have to kind of appreciate being the way you are, you know. I'm not always comfortable about every situation I'm in, but just appreciate the way you are. But obviously don't have that problem either.
No, I think it's a good question. I was looking at this question before coming here because I was grappling with it because I think it's something, you know, even if you've been working for a long time, which I obviously haven't, it's still something that people grapple with. I agree with celebrating the small successes. I think just reminding yourself on a day-to-day basis, like how much time you're putting in, you know, really starting from the basics and understanding what you do, reiterating to yourself, no, I put the time in, I've studied this. You know, I think that's starting small, helps your self-doubt and kind of growing from there. But
Yeah, I'm trying to think of.
I know that's
what it would be.
I think a little bit of that is fine, because that's what I'm thinking. Everybody have a little bit of that, right? But recognize when is too much. I mean, if you like constantly worry about it, anxious about it, that's, you cross the line. So just, I wouldn't worry about, you know, if you just kind of screwed up a project, you feel bad. I mean, that's just a normal process. So just recognize when it's too much. I would say that would be the key. Yeah.
So I would say two things, one of which is I feel like I spent a lot of years focusing on trying to make my weaknesses mediocre, like,
Yeah.
you know, like trying to boost
Right.
up my weakest link, and I feel a lot happier and also just more productive and better when I focus on my strengths and really lean into the things that I'm naturally good at.
Yeah.
So I think that's probably the biggest thing. And I think the other thing too is when you get older, you realize that the people that are the most successful are the people that have failed the most, because the failures are when you learn the most. And so over time, over repetition, and you could like even force yourself to do this, you know, like whether it be like go to a stranger and ask them for $1 or something, and they say no, like, okay, it's gonna be fine. Like, you failed that time you didn't get the $1, but like, you know, over time you practice and you get less scared of it, and I think that that's a really helpful thing to think about.
Yeah, I'm gonna touch what Katie just said about the first one. New way of coaching is actually you focus on your team's strength, you know, to your point, and everybody have their weaknesses, but leverage and maximize the strength. Focus on that just as much as you focus on your weaknesses. That's kind of how they, you know, they start coaching people differently. Yeah.
yeah, I guess make sure you surround yourself with people that also uplift you, do the things that you like to do, people are strong in those areas, and then open yourself to accepting help and again accepting the failure and opportunities to learn. So that ultimately makes you better.
So one last question before we close out here. What is the most influential piece of advice that you've ever heard? whether from parent or how it applies in your career field, like advisor, maybe it was Jade.
Dave's great. Dave's great. So I don't know if it's influential, but there's something that my dad always says to me, my brother's in the audience too, says to both of us that really helps me out, especially in manufacturing when things, I mean, could potentially catch on fire and or there's small hypothetical fires all the time. And so he always says, like, how do you eat an elephant? And then I respond back, one bite at a time. That's,
I think as far as maybe making the next step in your career or making a transition, trying lots of things or not being afraid to try new things or jump to something totally different and out of your comfort zone. I think being uncomfortable gives you the chance to grow. So I think that's a big piece of advice, it's something that I remind myself, especially as I recently took a new role at Intel for a variety of reasons. So just reminding myself, you know, it's okay to do something different. You know, you learn a lot by the things you don't like or things that didn't work out for you. So.
For me, it's who cares most about your career? It's you yourself, because you should always be on the driver's seat in terms of navigating through your career. Because you know because I'm a little bit passive, you know, and so I miss out. I feel like early on in my career, lots of opportunities for network, and so just always, you know, again, even though it doesn't matter how much your boss like you, you know, you control your own destiny. So you have to start early on building all that networking connection.
All right, well, thank you so much for the amazing responses. Let's thank our panelists.